Reporting, as you heard, that it's the United States plus these 5 Arab countries. The UAE is in the lead among the Muslim countries. The United States is in the lead in the overall coalition, as you might imagine. Joining me now, Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report, who is live in the D.C. Bureau for us tonight. Brett?
And Megyn, remember the president went down to Central Command in Tampa. We're told that then he was presented a specific battle plan that is essentially the blueprint for what we're seeing tonight. You mentioned the key part of this is the coalition and the 5 Arab nations, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, and Bahrain. That is a big deal that will be touted by this White House because, as you know, they've been trying to put an Arab face on this coalition for some time. There are still questions about boots on the ground and all of that. But this is a mission that is being flown with fighter jets from those countries. Expect the president to make a big statement about that tomorrow and likely meet with those countries in New York as he heads to the United Nations. These strikes, as you talked about with Colonel North, are very specific. They've been planned out with intelligence that they've been gathering over the past few weeks. And we are seeing a Navy operation with Tomahawk missiles from the Arleigh Burke in the Red Sea, as well as the destroyer. And then you're seeing a U.S. mission that has all kinds of different elements to it. Bombers, drones, and obviously F-18s from the USS George H.W. Bush, the aircraft carrier. This is a full-scale bombing run, and while it says 20 targets, it'll be interesting to see how many bombs are actually dropped.
Brett, you know, you covered the White House for Fox News in addition to the Pentagon for many years. This action tonight would not have happened if President Obama hadn't specifically given the order. And that would have, we expect, to happen tonight. We had heard earlier today it might be coming.
Yeah, exactly. He would have given the order. He might have given the order actually before tonight, and they had the plans in place to get all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed, as the president has said on other issues. And this was a blueprint that was presented to him, we're told, at Central Command down in Tampa. Now, the specific targets and exactly when it would happen, remember, the command and control here is a key element. Who is overseeing all of these different elements of this coalition? It is a U.S.-run operation, but all of these countries are submitting to the command and control of the U.S. in the big blueprint of these strikes.
Indeed. Brett, stand by. Much more with you in just ahead. I want to go to Jennifer Griffin, who's live at the Pentagon with an update on our story. Jennifer?
Hi, Megyn. Well, one thing that's very important to remember that earlier this evening there was a conference call held by the White House by a senior administration official who did tell reporters that, in fact, they had seen signs that some of the 100 or so American jihadists who had gone to Syria for training with ISIS, that some of those had come back to the United States. That's the first time we had heard that reported and that confirmed by the White House. And again, the timing of this is very interesting because there will be legal questions as to why the U.S. and these allies are striking Syria. This is a sovereign country. They were not invited in to strike against ISIS targets by Bashar Assad. They're not working with the government of Bashar Assad. So there will be legal questions about what the legal basis for these airstrikes are. So what you saw happen earlier today is the U.S. officials were laying the groundwork for a justification for these strikes by suggesting that some of those 100-plus Americans who had been trained by ISIS were now being tracked by the FBI back here in the United States. That's going to be significant in the days to come, particularly with President Obama going up to the UN tomorrow. He'll be meeting with the UN Security Council. In fact, on Wednesday, he will be heading a UN Security Council meeting. It's only the second time ever that a U.S. president has led a UN Security Council meeting, and during that meeting they will be coming up with a resolution to deal with these dozens of countries that have foreign fighters that have been flooding into Syria and Iraq. They're going to come up with a resolution to try and stop those fighters, to put into place ways in which to stop those fighters. And this is all part of what the White House plans to do over the coming days in terms of building support for this allied set of airstrikes over Syria.
Jennifer, Stand by. This comment came in earlier from Rear Admiral John Kirby, who's the Pentagon press secretary. It reads in part as follows. The decision to conduct these strikes was made earlier today by the U.S. Central Command commander. That's the group that oversees the region, under authorization granted him by the commander-in-chief. We will provide more details later as operationally appropriate. So confirming that this decision to launch the strikes was made today by U.S. CENTCOM, pursuant to authorization granted by the president. I want to bring in Congressman Peter King, who's a member of the House Homeland Security Committee and chairman of the subcommittee on counterterrorism and intelligence. And so, Congressman, your reaction now, because the president came under some criticism for waiting too long to launch the airstrikes that he said he was going to launch. The White House said we're building a coalition. Tonight we're getting our first look at what that coalition, how it looks. 5 Muslim countries, Sunnis, who will be fighting other Sunnis. No European allies. Your thoughts?
I think it's a major step by the president. I think it's important for all Americans to support the president. I and others have been calling for this really for a number of weeks now, if not months. But the bottom line is it is being done. If there are, obviously there are these Arab nations involved, Sunni Arab nations. This is a very, very positive step, and I think it's really important for all of us to come together. Whatever happened in the past, that's behind us. It's important now as Americans that we go forward, support the president, and urge him to continue this to make sure these attacks continue and go on until ISIS has been devastated. So again,
explain to the audience why it is important that we have these 5 Arab countries participating in this coalition with us, because one gets the impression that ISIS doesn't much care who we're with or not with. They want to kill us all. Is that not true? And even if it is true, does it matter with respect to the rest of the world?
Yes, it matters to the rest of the Arab world. Again, it's not a 100% guarantee, but it makes our case better among other Sunnis, among other Arabs, that the ISIS can't say this is an attack by the infidels, this is an attack by the West. By having other Arab nations involved, it certainly makes our position better. Now, militarily, they're going to help, but the main benefit is going to come from the diplomatic end, from the political end, from the fact that this is not a religious war. Now, they will still claim it is, but it weakens the ISIS argument. Put it this way, it strengthens the U.S., and it puts us in a better position diplomatically. Again, I would have supported the attacks whether or not we had the coalition support, but the fact that we have it is definitely a plus.
Congressman King, here we are. A year ago, the president spoke at the UN, and he was proud to announce that we had withdrawn all of our troops from Iraq. And here we are, re-entering the region in a very robust way, bombing Syria, the thing that we did not do when they used chemical weapons against their own people, re-engaging in the Middle East in a war that many fear could become a generational conflict. Perhaps it already is. Your thoughts on the big picture of what this means for the United States of America?
I think it's important for the United States to realize, as the president apparently now realizes, we just can't declare an end to wars in the Middle East. The fact is, Islamic terrorism is out to destroy us. They're going to fight us every way they can, and the war is only going to end when they are defeated. And this may well go on for a number of years. In fact, in many ways, it's been going on for 20 years. It's the first World Trade Center, the second World Trade Center attack 13 years ago. It's an enemy that we have to stay after, because as soon as we let our guard down, they will come after us. The president, I believe, made a mistake, a big mistake, in pulling out of Iraq the way he did. I think the same thing is happening in Afghanistan, and also by waiting a year to go by before we actually started carrying out these measures in Syria. The bottom line is, though, that's really in the past. We can use that as a lesson for the future. But right now, we have to stand with the president and certainly behind our military. This will be a well-coordinated series of attacks, and they have to go on and on. We cannot just do them for show value. We have to show that we're serious about it, and that is another way to line up support in the region, by showing that we're in this for keeps.
Congressman Pete King, thank you, sir. We want to get back now to General Jack Keane, retired 4-star general and former Army Vice Chief of Staff. He joined us at the top of the broadcast, knowing much more than he could say. General, thank you for rejoining us tonight. And so your thoughts now as we learn more of the details of this mission, and in particular, the coalition that's fighting it.
Well, I think we truly have to applaud, the President and Secretary Kerry and General Allen, to being able to put this together, because now we've got 5 Sunni countries involved in attacking a Sunni-based insurgency. Listen, Megyn, what makes this is so significant, and it's lost on people because they don't recognize that all of these Arab Muslim countries have radical Islamic insurgencies inside their country that are trying to disrupt what they're doing and eventually take over their country. So the fact of the matter that they understand the danger of ISIS, they have made a huge statement here tonight because they truly recognize this threat. And despite their problems that they've had with the president in the past, they have committed to join with us to go after it. And this is a significant accomplishment in the coalition coming together to truly strike ISIS.
And so your thoughts as someone who believed that the president should have gone in earlier, perhaps on the night he was announcing these airstrikes, do you see now something that makes you change your mind on that?
No, I don't, because I believe one of the things that really truly help us is surprise, and I would have liked that kind of tactical surprise. But nonetheless, I understand some of the challenges here. We waited too long to get to targetable information. We were taking satellite photos. We were taking standoff aircraft photos, and we needed to get some other targetable information in there. That was the president's decision in waiting too long. But nonetheless, let's put the past in the past. We're here now.
Yep.
We've got something that makes sense, and hopefully we'll be relentless in the pursuit of this enemy. And frankly, we've got a good chance to get after ISIS in Syria, where most of their support infrastructure is, and do some real damage to it.
And so our viewers know, as the lower third on the screen tells you, we have begun airstrikes in Syria, a U.S.-led operation, a coalition involving the United States of America and 5 Arab countries, all Sunni countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, and Qatar in there, fighting alongside of the United States. The operation, General Keane, is described as Tomahawk missiles have already been fired from the destroyer. We will also, F-18s are flying missions off of the USS George H.W. Bush in the Persian Gulf. We are flying bombers, fighters, and drones, expected to hit around 20 targets inside of Syria. Is that the size of the operation you would anticipate, at least on day one?
Well, look, at this is never going to compare to what we did in Kosovo, what we did in 2001 against the Taliban government that was running the country, and nor is it going to compare to what we did in 2003. There, we had huge infrastructure and lots of targets. This has always been what we described it at, and what we wanted. It's limited and it's specialized. So the number of targets are not comparable. The point is, what those targets represent and destroying them is the most important thing. So the scale of it will be less than what we've seen in the past, but nonetheless, it'll be very important in terms of its consequences on the enemy.
How long do you think this is going to take? I know that's a difficult question, General, but when you hear Congressman King say this could be the beginning of a years-long conflict, you know the feeling that evokes in so many people here in the States.
I doubt if the airstrikes in Syria would persist in that time frame. We will strike as long as there are targets to strike. It's that simple. And if those targets are exposed to us, we will strike. And you know, Megyn, we're going to be very careful here in striking these targets. We know for a fact that they've tried to protect and conceal some of these targets with people who are in Syria, and we will do everything we can, not to impact on people. This is our value-based system that the military uses every single day in executing warfare. So that also protracts it. It makes it longer because we discriminate, and we're going to do everything we can to avoid hurting people unnecessarily. And the fact of the matter is, as long as there are targets to strike, we will strike.
How will this group fight back? They seem so courageous when they have women and children and unarmed men running from them, or unarmed hostages for that matter. How will they fight back against this kind of air power?
Well, they'll probably do something horrific in terms of barbarism, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the 5 Arab Muslim countries, Megyn, who are participating. That'll be an interesting issue for them to cope with, because it is condemnation, from these countries, and that presents to them a psychological and emotional issue to deal with it. So it'd be interesting to see that. But the fact of the matter is, they will continue to fight in Iraq. But since we've started airstrikes in Iraq, Megyn, they have been on the defensive as we thought they would be. And the fact of the matter is, now they're going to be on the defensive in Syria. The issue will be, as we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, is airstrikes are going to be significant. It will cause them damage, but it will not be decisive in terms of destroying and defeating ISIS and running them out of Iraq and running them out of Syria. That will take ground forces to do, and that is the toughest thing, and it's all in front of us.
That's ground troops.
Yes, ma'am.
That's something the president not only says we are not doing, it is something he says we will not do. General, do you believe he can possibly stick to that?
As I've said to you before, ISIS will force the president to change his decisions about ground forces that are going to assist the Iraqi army and the collage of Peshmerga and also Sunni tribes that are working with him. It's inevitable that we'll have to put people down there as air ground controllers and special forces with the fighting units. And I also believe that eventually he will commit the JSOC direct action forces to go after and target the ISIS leadership. This would put such significant pressure on them when they're doing that, as we did so successfully in Iraq and Afghanistan. I also believe, as we said before, that eventually we will establish a contingency force in the event that counteroffensive by the Iraqi army and others fails, then we will have to go in and take that over. It's inescapable if we don't put that together at some point. If they succeed, that's fine. But if they don't, then we'll have to use it.